This is breaking news from Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
In a remarkable chapter of American history, for the first time, a former president faced a judge in a criminal courtroom on charges he broke the law, and it happened right here in New York City. The unsealed indictment revealing 34 felony counts tied to hiding hush money payments ahead of the presidential campaign. The former president pleading not guilty to all the charges. Trump is released on his own recognizance, now headed back on his plane to his home in Florida. And good afternoon, I'm David Navarro.
And I'm Liz Cho, and you're watching an abbreviated version of Eyewitness News First on the Eyewitness News First to 4. And as we come on the air, we know that former President Trump, he has now left New York. He boarded his plane at LaGuardia a short time ago, and he has now taken off on his way back to Florida, where he is expected to speak later tonight for the very first time after today's historic events.
This after he spent nearly an hour inside a Manhattan courtroom today. Trump addressed the court himself and pleaded not guilty to 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. Hundreds of Trump supporters and counter-protesters flocked to Lower Manhattan today for a tense standoff ahead of Mr. Trump's court appearance.
Well, the details of the indictment were released a short time ago. We have been digging into that late this afternoon. We're going to have full coverage on this historic day, but we want to begin with NJ Burkett. He's out live outside the courthouse, and the remarkable spectacle that played out today. The former president, now a criminal defendant. NJ.
That's right, Liz, 34 counts, all of them felonies. The former president, as you know, has been defiant in recent weeks, but in court, he looked subdued, even humbled. The Manhattan DA saying just moments ago that no one is above the law. His press release out just minutes ago. Here's an excerpt from it, Liz. The former president and others ran, quote, a scheme to identify, purchase, and bury negative information about him and boost his electoral prospects. Trump then went to great lengths to hide this conduct, causing dozens of false entries in his business records to conceal criminal activity, including attempts to violate state and federal election laws. End quote. Donald Trump was stone-faced as he entered the courtroom, where he took his seat at the defense table in his trademark suit and bright red tie and pleaded not guilty, an image that will endure in history books for decades to come. The indictment charges America's 45th president with 34 counts for falsifying business records.
Turn this way for me.
At the heart of the case, a $130,000 payment made to porn actress Stormy Daniels, who claimed she had an affair with Trump in 2006. Although the former president denied the allegation, prosecutors say he ordered his personal attorney, Michael Cohen, to buy her silence in the closing weeks of the 2016 campaign. Cohen is expected to be the star witness in the case and claims he has provided prosecutors with extensive documentation. Trump is accused of covering up the payment, listing it as a legal expense so it would not damage his campaign. The former president left Trump Tower with a fist pump. Then, moments later, riding alone with his Secret Service detail before arriving at Manhattan Criminal Court, where he would surrender and be placed under arrest. Trump's lawyers are hitting back hard today, determined to file an avalanche of legal motion.
I think that what you saw in the indictment that was unsealed today is exactly what has been talked about for the past 7 years, and the district attorney has turned what is actually a completely political issue into a political prosecution, and it's not a good day.
My office, including the talented prosecutors you saw at arraignment earlier today, has charged hundreds of felony falsifying business records. This charge, it can be said, is the bread and butter of our white-collar work. We today uphold our solemn responsibility to ensure that everyone stands equal before the law. No amount of money and no amount of power changes that enduring American principle.
Well, joining me here on Center Street is my Eyewitness News colleague, Nina Pineda. Nina was in the courtroom as this all unfolded. Nina, how would you describe the former president's demeanor today?
Well, NJ, the president put on social media, former president, that the experience of coming down here was surreal. I can tell you, when the doors of the courtroom opened, it got very real for the former reality star. Because I don't care who you are, if you have to come down the aisle and face a judge in criminal court and sit at the defense table, that experience can be be very intimidating. And he kind of lumbered side to side. We're used to the bombastic president kind of throwing his chest out, moving other world leaders to the side. Not the case at all. He sat quietly with his hands at his side or either folded on the table in front of him, and he just, for the first few minutes, stared quietly straight ahead. It wasn't until about 12 minutes of the proceeding, it was only about 55 minutes long, 12 minutes in, when asked how he pled to these 34 counts, felony counts, he just said, not guilty. The only other words he said during it was yes, and I do, when asked by the judge if he understood the legal proceedings in the future. For example, that he would be removed from the courtroom if he was disruptive. And he said in a voice so small, the judge had to ask him to repeat himself. The 45th president of the United States answered in a voice so small, he just said, yes.
Nina, what is it that struck you most about what you heard and saw in the courtroom?
I think it was the prosecution telling the judge that they would like for the defendant to tamp down the rhetoric, that they quoted him saying things like death and destruction or World War III, and they talked about the picture that he allegedly posted of a baseball bat to the defense attorney, Alvin Bragg's head. They asked him to take that down, and his defense attorney, Todd Blanche, said that he is frustrated and angry and tired of this 3.5-year prosecution of him, that he should have the right to defend himself and opine as he will. And the judge just said, listen, I encourage you, I'm not issuing a gag order, I encourage you to not talk about things that might incite civil unrest or jeopardize or target the individuals involved in that case. No gag order, but whether or not the president, the former president, President Trump, who we know likes to talk and is a very verbose person, whether or not he'll listen to those orders is another issue.
Nina Pineda with a front seat to history this afternoon here at Manhattan Criminal Court. That's it. Much more for you coming up on Eyewitness News at 5 and 6 o'clock tonight.